Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be a review of To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Always and Forever. I should have told you that I loved you one more time. If you don't know, Always and Forever is the new Netflix adaptation of the third book in Jenny Han's To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy, following Lara Covey and Peter Kavinsky. If you aren't familiar with that story and you haven't seen the first two movies or read the first two books, then I don't recommend watching this video because there will be spoilers for those two, as well as there's going to be spoilers for the final movie. I'm not going to lie to you guys, I'm not really bothered by spoilers in contemporary romance because you kind of know what's going to happen, but I will say at the end of this book, you're not entirely sure what's going to happen at the very end, but you do at least know, like, the couple gets together, they have a breakup period, and then they usually get back together, if you follow what I'm saying. So just briefly to set the scene for you, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Always and Forever starts with Lara Covey and Peter Kavinsky in the end of their senior year of high school, and they're trying to figure out the rest of their lives, basically. I know that it's not really that traumatic, and if you are older than that and you still don't have your life figured out, same, so it's fine. But I think there's a lot of tension when you're 18, 17 years old to have your whole future planned. And that's a lot of what this story is sort of covering. There are a lot of differences between the books in the series and the films in the series. I'm only going to be talking about the differences in the third book and the third movie. If you want me to go back and do the first book or the second book and the first and second movies, I can totally do that. Also, if you want to see my opinions on just the books, I do have a wrap-up where I read the first two books in December and the last book in January. I will link those wrap-ups somewhere so you can watch that if you are interested. But without further ado, let's just jump into the book versus movie review. Like I said, there are a lot of differences between To All the Boys I've Loved Before, the books and the movies. Specifically in the third book/movie, the movie starts with the song Covey Girls in Korea with their dad and his girlfriend Trina. And when they get back from Korea, her dad actually proposes to Trina, but before he does so, he talks to all the girls about it and lets them know what his plan is. A similar thing happens in the book, but they don't go to Korea in the book, and he doesn't tell all the girls, and Margot is not around for it. So the movie, Margot gets to see a lot more of Trina, and one of the biggest subplots in the book is Margot getting used to Trina being in her family and in her dad's life. Margot goes to school in Scotland, and she doesn't get to spend a lot of time with Trina, who is the across the street neighbor of the Coveys. So she doesn't really get to see the relationship between Dr. Covey and Trina grow the way that Kitty and Lara Jean do. And because of that, when she gets back from school for the summer, just in time for her dad's wedding, she moves back into a house that has a new person living in it. And that is a point of contention for Margot, just because she's coming back from living abroad and she doesn't really understand that all of this did happen slowly, because to her it feels like it happened overnight. Another one of the big subplots in the book and the movie is Peter's relationship with his father. In the movie, it doesn't really imply as much as it does in the book that Lara Jean is involved in that relationship, but in the book, Lara Jean is pushing Peter to reach out to his father and also convincing his father to reach out to him, and there's not as much meddling of that sort. And another thing that is a big subplot in the book is Lara Jean's desire to control the wedding between Trina and her dad. She wants to have the control of the bridesmaids' dresses, and she wants to plan the bachelorette party, and she wants to be involved in every step of the process and make it a much larger, more fanciful wedding that would fit Lara Jean's taste, but it doesn't necessarily fit her dad and Trina's tastes, as both of them have been married before and both of them want a more calm, relaxing backyard wedding. The movie definitely makes the backyard wedding look a lot more extravagant than it's described to be in the book, but I think part of that is just because the movie has the budget to make the wedding look as good. In the book, it's just a simple barbecue with a few tables in the backyard. The book has this giant tent and all these beautiful velvet cushions and velvet couches and velvet chairs. It's very, I don't know if it's like bohemian eclectic. It's a really popular like wedding aesthetic to have what appears to be like a low-key thrown together wedding, but actually probably costs like 50 grand. That's what their wedding looks like. Now, the biggest thing that I thought was interesting between the book and the film is in the books, Lara Jean lives in Virginia. So she lives in Richmond, Virginia. She's always lived in Richmond, Virginia. And I think a lot of the things that they included in the movie, but were also in the book, make more sense in the book because of the location. It wasn't as big of an issue when they lived in Oregon for the films in the first movie, and even in the second movie, because there wasn't anything really that, I guess, needed to be in Virginia for those, and anything that did, like there was a trip to DC that they just nixed from the movie, which made it make more sense. But in the books, Lara Jean and Peter Kavinsky both really want to go to college at UVA in Richmond, which is their hometown. And Lara Jean's big thing is that her parents went to UVA and she wants to go to UVA to be like closer to her mom and feel that connection. And also she's afraid to move away from home. In the movies, however, they live in Portland, Oregon, and they're talking about going to college in Stanford, which is 11 hours away. It's between 10 and 11 hours by driving. The other thing that doesn't really make sense location-wise is the class has their senior trip to New York City. And the movies try to make this make more sense by saying that Lara Jean wants to go to college in New York or applied to NYU. But it doesn't really make sense for her to do that because, like I said, she doesn't want to move away from home. So even in the books, she applies to UNC, and that's her, like, dream school that, like, she probably won't get into, but she applies for just for the heck of it. And UNC is only, like, 4 hours away, I think, which I went to college farther away than that from my hometown, so it's not that far. But I just thought that was such an interesting choice to have them instead of her. I even think it would make more sense for her to say she was going to go to UCLA instead or something. But the trip to New York for the high school seniors doesn't make sense with them living in Oregon. It just doesn't. Unless they went to like a fancy prep school. Because I know like some people go to Europe for their high school trips. But I feel like that makes more sense to me than going to New York City when you live so far away. Like, I feel like they should have made the senior trip like Seattle or something if they lived in Portland. Let me know if you grew up on the West Coast and you had like a senior class trip to New York, or if you had a senior class trip at all. I didn't have a senior class trip at all. But I also went to like public schools. So, but it appears that Lara Jean and Peter do as well. So I'm not really sure about all of that. I did think that was really interesting though. That being said, I liked the way they were able to combine in the movie Lara Jean's late night trip to UNC with her best friend Chris into the class trip by having her dreams or her other like wild card college option being NYU. And I liked that because I thought it made a lot of sense for the movie to do that, so they didn't have to plan like multiple big plot points. They were able to combine plot points, and I thought they did it really well. I just don't know that I think it makes as much sense. Because another point of contention between Lara Jean and Margot is that Margot is pushing her to go in the books to UNC, in the movie to NYU, but she wants her to go like somewhere away from home and somewhere to like stretch her legs. And in the books, it seems much less like Margot is trying to get her to break up with Peter and much more like Margot is trying to get her to like live her own life away from her family and like actually do the grown-up adult thing and go away to college. But in the movies, she'll be going away either way. So it seems much more like Margot is trying to get her to break up with Peter and get her and Peter to not be together. But Margot's motivation seemed a lot more pure in the books than it did in the movies, which I thought was interesting because in the first movie, they make Margot seem like she has good intentions and she's very sweet, but she's kind of like a bitch to Lara Jean in the first book, especially about Peter. It's like Margot had the opposite character arc in the films than what she had in the books. But also, it doesn't really make the fact that Lara Jean wants to go to Stanford anyways, which is already 10 and a half hours away from home, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for her to be mad at Margot for going to school in Scotland, which yes, is farther away and in a different time zone, and I get that it is different. But in the grand scheme of things, how much different is it going to be if you still can only fly home certain times of the year if you're living 11 hours away? It's not like she's going to be in the same college town and be able to go pick Kitty up from school if her dad needs her to, like she would have been able to in the books. So in the movies, Peter Kay and Lara Jean Covey decide that they would really like to go to Stanford to be together. And Stanford is a great school, and UVA is a good school as well, but I just think, again, there's some staunch differences here, because UVA seems like the type of school that would have a really good lacrosse or like sports program, and I haven't done any research on this, but Stanford to me doesn't scream the type of school that would give you a full ride for a sport. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I think you would get a partial scholarship, but the whole plot of the book is that Peter can't go anywhere else because he relies on that scholarship. Because his family is not as affluent as Lara Jean's, where she can go sort of wherever she wants because her dad's a gynecologist. So I just thought it was a really interesting choice to have them go to Stanford, which I could be wrong. Is Stanford a really big sports school? I don't know. I think, again, that was just, they picked the location for the first film, perhaps not realizing they were going to continue this to be a trilogy if it was popular, and then not thinking about these details that were going to need to be altered later. One of the big things that really also stuck out to me in the movies that was different from the books is that in the books, and this is mentioned in the movies, but they don't act on it, In the books, Lara Jean is trying to come up with the perfect cookie recipe, and she's trying all these different chefs' cookie recipes and trying to figure out how she can make her cookie less dense, more fluffy, more crispy, less crispy. Like, the perfect chocolate chip cookie is what she's trying to create. And so everywhere she goes, she gets a chocolate chip cookie when she goes there to try to see what she can glean from the texture of that and which recipe she likes the best. But in the movies, they mention that. And when they're in New York City, she mentions that there's a cookie place she wants to go to, and Peter sneaks away with her at night to go get the cookie. But they end up getting a cupcake while they're there. And it's only in later shots that they show them eating cookies. But they don't show that when the film is actually happening. So I thought that was really confusing. Also, when the Song Girls are in Korea, again, instead of cookies, they get cupcakes. But Lara Jean is talking about how much she loves cookies. And I get that you can like cookies and still eat cupcakes out. But it just was it just doesn't really make sense with the way the plot of the book sort of went. And to me, that's just such an easy thing. So it's weird to me that they changed that. Another plot point of the book that was completely cut out of the films is that Chris and Lara Jean aren't as close of friends anymore senior year. Lara Jean starts making friends with Peter's friends' girlfriends. And so the way that the movie accounts for this is by having Chris date one of Peter's friends, which I thought was cute. I thought it was fine. I thought it worked. And I get it because movies, you have to pay every cast member. So to add a whole new character doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Also, in the movies, Genevieve is who is going to NYU, which is Lara Jean's like other school of choice. And in the books, Johnny Ambrose McLaren gets into the backup school in Virginia that Lara Jean got into. So in the movies, it would have been UC Berkeley. And there's a whole issue with Peter being jealous that Lara Jean's going to be in school with John Ambrose McLaren. And then she decides to go to a completely different school. So that subplot point is just sort of completely cut from the whole movie. Which again, I thought was fine. I just thought it was an interesting choice. And I thought it would have been more interesting to keep that in just because it would have been a lot more weighing pros and cons. The movie just very much, to me, simplified the plot, which, again, makes a lot of sense because it is a movie, and it did end up being almost 2 hours long, which is pretty long for this style of movie, I think. Usually they're between an hour and a half and an hour and 45, but this was an hour and 55 to 56, something like that. But I did just think that was a really interesting, again, way to sort of cut corners on the movie. Also in the book, Margot comes home with a boyfriend, and he's in the movies. I have a feeling they probably filmed scenes with him because he's at Trina and the Dr. Covey's wedding, but he's not like a character. He's not named. He doesn't have any lines. They really cut out Margot and all of her plot points from the film. Another way that the book and the film differed is that the movie completely cut the beach trip that the students take after they graduate high school. And the book really focuses a lot on that beach trip and only vaguely mentions prom. The movie turns the beach trip into prom to where that is where a lot of the action sort of happens. One of the things I didn't really love about that is that in the book, we get to see Lara Jean sort of grappling with whether or not she feels ready to take her and Peter's relationship to the next level of like physical intimacy. And in the movie, Chris mentions to her that it's a cliche to lose your virginity at prom because a lot of people do, and it's kind of romantic in a cliche way on prom night. And that's when Lara Jean's like, maybe we will do this tonight. And so I feel like that sort of cheapened the thought process that went into it for me for Lara Jean, because in the book, it is something that she's so like conscious of the fact that they haven't yet, and she doesn't know if they should. And that also is a big reason for her and Peter's breakup, because Peter feels like Lara Jean's trying to say goodbye to him by doing all these big gestures and special things and saying things like something to remember me by when she gives him in the book a scrapbook, in the movie her hat box, and things like that. But something that I think the movies really suffered from cutting out was all of the uncertainty that Lara Jean felt about the way Peter felt about her. So the movie just focuses on the fact that it's Lara Jean deciding if she's going to go to college close to Peter, try to transfer into Stanford so they can be together, or if she's going to go to college farther away from Peter. And I do think that having the colleges be on opposite sides of the country does make it a lot higher stakes, but to me it also makes it less likely that they will stay together. I don't want to be a cynic, because I'm sure people have done that, but it just seems it's not a 4-hour drive away from each other. It's probably close to that in flying, which is much more cost prohibitive of visiting, and also it makes it impossible to like meet in the middle on the weekends and hang out or anything like that. The movie also, like I mentioned, the movies took away a lot of Lara Jean's uncertainty with Peter's affections for her. And one of the big ways that the movie did this was by not focusing as much on the yearbook. So in the books, Lara Jean asks Peter to sign her yearbook and write something special in it. And every time she sees him after that, she asks him for her yearbook back because she wants to get other people to sign it, and he still hasn't given it to her. And he's like, oh yeah, I wrote you a note, it's just I left it at my house. And then she sees her yearbook when she goes to his house later, and it's empty. He hasn't written anything in it. And so she thinks, oh my god, he doesn't love me, because for her, she really needs to have that love written out in like a love letter. And so the ending and what he ends up writing in the yearbook is pretty similar. In the book and in the movie, and their meet cute is the same in the book and in the movie. I don't remember if he writes the meet cute in the yearbook in the movie or in the book. You'll have to let me know, but he does in the movie. It's what he writes is pretty similar. It's the manner in which he gives it back to her is entirely different. Because in the book, he sort of gives it back to her in like the epilogue area of the book, and in the movie, he goes to her dad's wedding that he goes after her dad's wedding, which is the wedding he said he wouldn't go to because they broke up, and gives her yearbook there, and that's sort of the end of the film, which I thought was a fine way to end it. I don't really have any big qualms with that. I gave the book 5 stars. I gave the movie 4.5 stars on Letterboxd, just because I loved To All the Boys I Loved Before the original movie so much more, but I did like the third book the best out of all of the books, because I felt like the book really did a good job, or the book series did a good job of developing each of the characters into their own person, and I enjoyed that. The character development much more, and the character arcs much more in the books, whereas in the movies it felt like Peter stayed stagnant. Lara Jean sort of had like ebbs and flows, but she's the main character, so you expect that. Kitty's arc is different in the movies just because in the movies they give her a boyfriend in the last one, which she doesn't have in the book. And then Margot's arc is sort of backwards in the movies and the books, in my opinion. I would love to hear your thoughts down below if you think that I'm wrong about that, or if you just have a different lens or a different viewpoint on that. And then the last way that the book and the movie are really different is that the movie starts with the girls in Korea, and the book ends with Lara Jean getting tickets to Korea for her and her sisters to go stay with their family over the summer. And it's sort of what she thinks is going to be the nail in the coffin to her and Peter's relationship, because she's been hyping herself up that they have all summer to sort of hang out, get on really good terms, constantly be together, and then they'll go to separate colleges, but they'll be able to meet up on weekends sometimes and hang out sometimes. But that dream is sort of cut off by the fact that she's going to be going to Korea. In the books, that's the thing that she doesn't want to tell Peter about, and she sort of hides from him for a while. Whereas in the film, she hides that she didn't get into Stanford for a while, which to me made much less sense. I didn't understand why she felt like she couldn't tell him. But, I mean, maybe you do understand that, and that did make sense to you, but that didn't make as much sense to me as not wanting to tell him and not wanting to ruin prom or the beach trip by saying, hey, I'm going to Korea for 2 months this summer, and we won't get to really hang out. Those are, to me, the biggest differences in the third book and the third movie. Let me know if I missed anything. Also, let me know down below in the comments if you love this series or if you think it should have been a standalone. I've heard a lot of people have conflicting views. I personally loved the third book so much that I'm okay with not liking the second book very much to have the whole series, but I do know that not everyone sort of agrees with me on that. As always, please remember to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me. Let me know if you would like to see me do this with the first and second books and movies, and let me know if you have any other requests of books that have recently been turned into adaptations or will soon be turning into adaptations that you would like me to do this style of video with. But yes, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye! I should have told you